Part 54, the Epistle to the Hebrews, Faith that Overcomes the World. Faith in the Land of Promise. A sample list of heroes of faith. There is not enough time for the author to describe the faith of others in detail, such as judges like Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, a king like David, a prophet like Samuel, and the rest of the prophets. But what the author does provide is that which follows. A summary list of what faith accomplished. Through faith, people such as these subdued kingdoms. Joshua in conquering Palestine, Joshua 12 verses 7 through 24. David in conquering neighboring nations, 2 Samuel 5 verses 4 through 25 and 8, 1 through 4. Worked righteousness, administered justice, Samuel as judge, 1 Samuel 12 verse 4. David as king, 2 Samuel 8 verse 15. Solomon as king, 1 Kings 3 verse 28. Obtained promises. The nation of Israel received the promised land, Joshua 21 verses 43 through 45 and 23 verse 14. Stopped the mouths of lions, Samson, Judges 14 verse 6. David protecting sheep, 1 Samuel 17 verses 34 through 37. Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel 6 verses 21 and 22. Quenched the violence of fire, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego in the fiery furnace, Daniel 3 verses 23 through 25. Escaped the edge of the sword, David fleeing King Saul, 1 Samuel 23 verses 19 through 29. Elijah fleeing Jezebel, 1 Kings 19 verses 8 through 10. Elisha, whom the king of Israel wanted murdered, 2 Kings 6. Out of the weakness were made strong, Samson after his hair was cut, Judges 16 verses 29 and 30. Hezekiah, who was given 15 years of life, Isaiah 38 verses 1 through 8. Became valiant in battle, turned to fight the armies of aliens. David in defeating Goliath, 1 Samuel 17 verse 50. Jehoshaphat in defeating Edom, 2 Chronicles 20 verses 1 through 30. Hezekiah, whose faith led to the slaughter of 185,000 Assyrian soldiers, 2 Kings 19 verses 1 through 36. Also through faith, women received their dead raised to life again. The widow of Zarephath via Elijah, 1 Kings 17 verses 17 through 24. The Shunammite woman via Elisha, 2 Kings 4 verses 8 through 37. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, to obtain a better resurrection. Eleazar in the Maccabean period between the Testaments, 2 Maccabees 6 verse 30. Also 7 brothers and their mother tortured by Antiochus Epiphanes, 2 Maccabees 7 verses 9 through 36. Such events would have been well known by the Hebrew readers. Others had trials of mocking, scourgings, chains, and imprisonment. Micah the prophet, 1 Kings 22 verses 24 through 28. Jeremiah the prophet, Jeremiah 20 verses 1 through 3, 37 verses 11 through 21, and 38 verses 1 through 13. Some were stoned. Zechariah son of Jehoiada the priest, 2 Chronicles 24 verses 20 through 22. Sawn in two, the prophet Isaiah, according to tradition. Tempted, Daniel as a youth, Daniel 1 verse 8 through 21. Slain with the sword, Uriah the prophet, Jeremiah 26 verses 20 through 23. Some wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins. Elijah, 2 Kings 1 verse 8. Being destitute, afflicted, tormented. Elijah, 2 Kings 17 verses 2 through 6 and 18 verses 9 and 10. What these people received by their faith, certainly not the praise of the world. Hebrews 11, verse 38. Many had to wander in deserts and mountains, live in dens and caves. Elijah. But in truth, the world is not worthy of them. They did obtain a good testimony. Hebrews 11, verse 39a. As stated regarding the elders in Hebrews 11, verse 2. As stated regarding Enoch. Hebrews 11, verse 5. Yet they did not obtain the promise during their lifetime. Hebrews 11, 39b through 40. They did receive some of the promises, such as the promised land. Hebrews 11, verse 33. But they did not receive the promise. They did not live to see the coming of the promised deliverer, Christ, nor did they experience the perfection which Christ now offers. The law could not make them perfect. Hebrews 9, verses 9 and 10, and 10, 1 through 4. But Christ can. Hebrews 9, verses 11 through 14, and 10, verses 11 through 14. What they did not receive during their lifetime, they did with the coming of Christ. For Christ died to redeem them as well as us. Hebrews 9, verse 15. They are now made perfect, just as we are. Hebrews 11, verse 40, 10, verse 14, and 12, verses 22 through 24. Note the phrase, the spirits of just men made perfect, in Hebrews 12, verse 23. Those who in the past should not be made perfect apart from us are in Christ made perfect. Conclusion. Through faith they truly overcame the world. Sometimes their victory was miraculous, often it was not. Their ultimate victory was that they died in faith. Hebrews 11, verses 13 through 16. And now they enjoy the fruit of faith, bliss in the presence of the Lamb. Revelation 7, verses 9 through 17. Through faith, we can also overcome the world. Faith in Jesus as the Son of God will give us the victory. 1 John 5, verses 4 and 5. Victory over the world's temptations. Victory over the world's persecutions. The victories we win may not be as impressive as those listed in this chapter, but if we are faithful until death, the reward will be the same. Revelation 2, verse 10. May this great chapter with its heroes of faith serve to motivate us to grow in the faith which pleases God, embraces the promises, overcomes the world. We may not win the praise of the world, but we will receive the praise of God, for such is the faith which leads to the saving of the soul. This concludes part 54 of the book of Hebrews.